Welcome, everyone, to Watch Challenge. On each episode, we challenge ourselves to find and watch a film of a particular type and then report the results back to each other and you fine listeners. My name is Mike Wendt.
And I'm Aaron Spears, and this episode's challenge, Mike, you picked was Kids on an Adventure.
Yeah, part of it was inspired that Stranger Things Season 4 launched just a few days ago on Netflix, but also I did find that this particular episode was hard to find movies that I had not seen.
Oh, okay.
So it was because I feel like so many of the great kids adventure movies came out, I believe, I think the 80s is probably the standard for it. And
I don't know what was going on in the 80s, but like all the lists I was looking at, like all the top spots are the 80s stuff.
Yeah. And maybe that's why I'm so drawn to Stranger Things, because it takes place in the 80s and it has a lot of those Spielbergian vibes to it. But yeah, for some reason this one, it was a little bit of a challenge. Hence our name, Watch Challenge.
That's the theme.
But ultimately I was finally able to find one that actually was surprised that I never seen. I'm getting way above the horse here, but
well, is it like, because there's a few different ways to approach that too, which I think I went in a different direction than that you did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is this as adults we're getting nostalgic, or did you go like, I'm an adult, I'm getting nostalgic for something I missed? It's like we were trying to dig deep into those 80s vault to just sort of see. Okay.
Yes. I was just, I obviously, I went and found a list and I was just checking off everything. I was like, okay, I've seen that.
Yep.
But then there was one that I like had to do a double take, and I looked at I know of this movie and I know who's in this movie, but for some reason I just never watched it.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
That's kind of the route that I went.
Because I was also thinking there's a certain, because I was looking at a lot of lists too, and there were some titles I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not watching them. Because like they're meant for kids, and I'm a cynical film geek here. Like I'm not gonna watch. That's clearly meant for kids. It's clearly gonna drive me nuts. It's probably poorly made. It's probably poorly acted, or at least like barely acted. No, I don't want to shame a bunch of child actors or anything, but like, it's meant for a child audience to consume at a specific point in time. And there's a plethora of what looks like garbage in the last like 20 years within this genre, which, I haven't seen it, most of them, so it's unfairly. But the stuff I've dipped my toe into, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not one. But I feel like there's a certain maybe magic to the 80s stuff where like it does still work for adults. Like, yes. I don't know if it's still, I don't think it's really tainted with nostalgia. This isn't one of my honorable mentions, but it's definitely like one of the kids on adventure movies, Goonies. I missed it growing up. I watched it for the first time like 4 years ago because my buddy, a buddy of mine, he grew up with HBO. I did not. Actually, that's our dynamic too. You grew up with HBO, as we mentioned before, and I did not. And I just missed Goonies, and I watched it probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was definitely pre-COVID. And I reported back to him. I was like, damn, that movie works. Like, I have no nostalgia for it, but I was like, it works right now. And also there's the element of like, this would never get made now.
See, in some ways I'm surprised, because a lot of people who have seen the Goonies later in life think that it's not all that great, or why do people love this so much? I don't get it. It's interesting to me, because it's like, you can definitely, I sometimes I have a couple younger people who work in my office, and we always play that game of, have Julie and Maria seen this movie?
Oh, okay.
Because it's like there's kind of a generational gap in our office dynamic. So there's like there's the 3 older of us, and then there's 2 younger.
Yeah.
And so we always have this fun game of like, have you seen the Goonies, or insert whatever thing from the 80s. It's kind of funny.
I guess as I'm aging too, I'm thinking like we maybe should have defined what kids means in Kids on an Adventure, because
right.
I mean, I was like up through people in college, so I was like, that's a kid to me now. But I don't think we meant like in college age. I feel like the kids implied like
Yeah.
a 18 or younger kind of adventure.
Yeah. No, I mean, in one, uh, I think you were kind of hinting at this, and I know you have children.
Hmm.
What is it about this modern era where it seems like movies that are intended for, adventures with like children or like or preteens have become where the 80s ones had a little bit of edge and like they were not afraid to go maybe a little bit scary or a little
Sure.
bit um, you know, envelope pushing.
Yeah.
It seems like now they're very kind of watered down, very safe. I mean, I think
Yeah.
safe is the correct word. And in some of, I mean, occasionally there is this like there'll be like a gem that comes out,
Right.
but it's so weird to me how 20 years ago, 25, almost now 35 years ago, in the case of the Goonies or something,
Yeah.
that like that might be considered too risque or taboo now. It's a weird era we live in, I
Yeah,
think.
you're definitely right. I think there's a couple things going on, and I wish I had pulled some titles off the top of my head. But like having watched them, so I have a ninth grader and a sixth grader, and first of all, like film is not their go-to medium for entertainment. Like they do
Yeah.
not go to like I'm going to watch that movie
Yeah.
because I think that movie looks great or whatever. Like they just go right to YouTube or TikTok. So
Yeah.
it's not a format they go to. They got me as a dad, so there's still like, I took my daughter to see the new West Side Story because she's been in dance classes and she was 3, and I was like,
Sure.
you're going to be wowed by this. And she was wowed by some of it, and then she was immediately bored out of her mind and needed like her phone out or something because they just undivided attention for 2 hours is not how they're taking in stories at all. It's really weird. Although they both
Yeah.
do love Stranger Things. We're going through that right now, so it depends on the format there, I guess. But so when I asked them, I'm like, hey, what stands out to you guys? They're not referencing any of this, the previously mentioned crap that I don't have any titles for right now.
Yeah.
But they were referencing like Stranger Things and at one point War Games because we started watching
Oh yeah.
Stranger Things related 80s content because I was like, oh, that's a reference to this, that's a reference to that. So that did pique their interest and expanded out their watching a little bit. My daughter, for a while, her favorite movie was Ready Player One, which is like
Okay. Yeah.
dipped and deep fried in everything 80s. And it probably was something to do with being a fan of Stranger Things for a number of years now. So
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I feel like if they maybe because not that there's a lot of edge to Ready Player One or something, but I think there is to Stranger Things from their perspective. Like
Oh yeah.
that's her introduction because she's been watching with me for years now. That was her introduction to like what horror is,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. You have to kind of go outside of the film world for at least that small sample size of 2 little humans that I live with. But like, it's just not where they're going to get. Like Goonies had our undivided attention. If you went and saw that in the theater or was on in your living room on HBO, that was just what you were watching,
Yeah.
and it took you away. And I actually had a couple examples in my honorable mentions here. Have that there, but like, yeah, it's interesting that it's just not the go-to dominant format in their pop culture universe anymore. So,
Yeah. Well, I guess speaking of honorable mentions, what are some of yours?
well, so I didn't want to pick like I mentioned Goonies, like some of those top tier ones. Like, yeah, people know those. Like those are familiar. I just went completely nostalgic with mine. Like, here are the ones that I went to again and again. I was a VHS kid. Once we got a VCR, like late '80s, early '90s, these were the ones I either rented from the video store or got from the library. Most often got from the library just because they were
Yeah.
free, and I didn't have to like, hey mom, can I have $5 for 5 movies for 5 days? I could just get these movies for free. So the two I got the most out. One was License to Drive
Okay.
from
Yeah.
1988, starring the Coreys, and was where I didn't realize this until years ago when I was tried rewatching it. Oh, it. I don't know about this one. If you don't have nostalgia value to this one, it is probably not going to work for you. But Heather Graham is Mercedes. She's the love interest in this
Oh
movie.
yes.
And this movie, I think, shuts off your imagination for your tolerance for this movie is shut off the minute you actually have a driver's license. This movie works if you're under 16 because it's all about one of the
Right.
Coreys goes to get his driver's license. He fails, but he has this evening out on the town plan. And since he fails, he just fakes that he has a license. And they get into all kinds of hijinks and shenanigans out on the town. And I was like, man, as soon as I get my license. So it was like this fantasy movie to watch from my perspective when I was under 16.
Yeah.
The other one we rented all the time, my sister and I, for some reason, were obsessed with this one, which is weird because there's really no female roles to speak of, is Toy Soldiers from 1991.
Ah, yes.
Is that one of your, I'm not one of your honorable mentions, that's one you've seen?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
for sure. That was a HBO. That was definitely a HBO movie.
Oh no, yeah, of course, yeah, HBO one. I mean, the cast is crazy. I was a really big Louis Gossett Jr. fan through the late '80s, early '90s because he was a lot of straight to VHS action. I watched with my dad.
Yeah.
Firestarter. What was the Top Gun knockoff he was in? Like
Oh. Oh
Iron
man.
Eagle or something.
Yes, Iron Eagle.
Iron
Mm-hmm.
Eagle, that series. But anyway, Toy Soldiers. The high concept for that was it's Die Hard at a prep school, and so it's kids fighting back against terrorists that take over their prep school, and I watched that over and over and over again. And my last honorable mention actually is an HBO one because when I was a kid, one of the things I looked forward to once we had cable but not HBO was we got HBO free preview weekends,
Yes.
and we got the little booklet in the mail, and I would highlight stuff. And the very first movie I watched on a free preview weekend. It was a double feature, and I'm only going to mention the first one because we'll mention the other one later on at some other point. But it was Space Camp from
Yes.
1986.
Oh man. Yes.
Group of kids who are at space camp, which I always wanted to go to but never got to go to. So it was a total fantasy for me. And they're accidentally launched into space, and they have to use their science knowledge and everything they learned in camp to survive. But looking back now, it's the cast. Like I was obsessed with Leah Thompson. Or I had a
Yes.
crush, I
No,
guess,
that's one of my 80s crushes as well.
But you
She's
also
still
have
a good looker.
Oh my god, yeah. I was watching Caroline in the City when I probably shouldn't have been, just because I was still obsessed with Leah Thompson. But also, it has Kate Capshaw. It's got Joaquin Phoenix
Oh wow. Oh, I forgot that he was in it.
and Tate Donovan. Like, it's a weird cast, but that one I have not revisited, so I couldn't say if that one holds up. Toy Soldiers is still a riot, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
full nostalgia. Honorable mention for me here. What about you, Mike?
I will say, like, Monster Squad is one that I was often on Channel 43 here in Cleveland. It's just there were several movies that were always on the weekends. Like Teen Wolf was often also on. That's
Sure.
one that I have, like, probably in the long run it's probably not a great movie, but but I find that movie very very entertaining. But Monster Squad the same. It has like it's basically, I think it's almost like you could call it slightly like a Goonies ripoff or knockoff
Mhm.
slightly, but the fact that they had all of the Dracula and the Mummy and all those like characters kind of melded in with the kids' adventure,
Yeah.
that was great. One that I have a soft spot for, and it's is The Sandlot. Honestly, from '93.
Yeah.
It's just that is one where it's kind of sweet. It's like it's
Mhm.
very PG, but I thought that that was something that I remember, like, my parents bought us the tape and we
Mhm.
watched it all the time. I think, and not too long ago, I revisited it. Actually, there was an outdoor screening in the neighborhood that I live in, and some of it is. I think the one thing that really works with that is that they got like this really great kid actors, and I feel
Mhm.
like sometimes when I've seen some of these things, especially some of the straight to Netflix stuff, that I think some of the kid acting is terrible. I mean, no offense to these kids who are just trying to earn a paycheck, but these I think the kids in the Sandlot just had this natural chemistry that really comes through, and it's. I mean, I'm a huge baseball person, so
Mhm.
I don't know. It was like the best of both worlds, and also the fact that it's take. I have kind of like a appreciation for things that take place in the '60s and '70s.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for
Oh
me,
yeah, that's like a flashback one, isn't it?
yes,
Okay, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So I think it takes place in '61 or
Okay.
'62, one of those two.
Even though it came out that was like an early '90s one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
'93.
93.
or
Okay.
so. But yeah, that one definitely sticks out for me.
That one is similar to Goonies for me because I missed it growing up. But my again, like it's interesting that like my daughter's saying she loves Ready Player One, where I was like, well, it's a male protagonist. Like that's interesting. I mean, there's female characters obviously in there, but my wife grew up like loving The Sandlot, and I was like, just crosses even gender lines with
Yeah,
that too. Because I was like, what character did you grab into? She's like, I don't know. I grew up going to my brother's baseball games because I was the oldest and I had to like walk them to
yeah,
the field. She's like, so I was always around baseball, and that movie's awesome. It captures exactly, what it's like, summer baseball, hanging out, your friends get together. I was like, all right, cool.
yeah.
But it does, it works. It
I
worked.
I think also just having James Earl Jones like being like kind of like the wise old neighbor,
Yeah.
is something that kind of works for me as well. Even though he's like barely in the movie, but
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt.
yeah. So what did you end up picking?
Oh, so I ended up picking I did go with a movie I hadn't seen in a long, long, long time, but it was one that I never thought about it as being a kids on an adventure, even though it's totally a kids on adventure. I always looked at it as more almost like a time travel movie, which I'm obsessed with and is definitely a topic we will be visiting at
Sure.
some point in the life of this show for sure. But I went with Pleasantville from 1998.
Ah, yeah.
There's a place where life is simple. People are perfect. And everything is black and white.
Honey, I'm home.
It's a place that's as far from reality as we can imagine.
How about some marshmallow rice squares?
Those are swell.
But maybe it's a lot closer
Let me see that.
than we think.
What happened?
I'm not sure.
Look at me. I'm pasty.
Morning, kids. Better get a move on or you'll be late for school.
I put blueberries in them just the way you like.
We're in Pleasantville?
No!
We're supposed to be in school.
We're supposed to be in color?
What's all the commotion?
Who's that?
I didn't think you'd want to come here until we've been pinned for a little while.
You can pin me anytime you want to. Or maybe I should just pin you.
She's a fine young woman. She would never do anything for us to be concerned about.
From the creator of Big and Dave,
What are you doing to these people? You can't do this to them. You're messing with their whole universe.
Maybe it needs to be messed with, David.
comes a story about the loss of innocence.
I brought you something from the library.
Gee whiz. And the power of change.
What's outside of Pleasantville?
There's some places where the road keeps going.
Written and directed by Gary Ross, and I thought like this is what a great time travel hook. They time travel back to the 50s, even though the hook is really it's two suburban teens, high school teens. Actually, I think they're twins. Because I think they're the same.
I think you're
level.
right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Played by Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire. We're going to get into the cast here a little bit too, because damn, is this cast stacked full
Stacked.
of
Yes.
stacked full of people in 1998. But this is so it's like two 90s suburban teens, so like full kind of like not quite like Gen X, but like that like late 90s teenager goes back to their favorite 1950s. So they're two teenagers. One is like obsessed with this, basically a Nick at Night show called Pleasantville, and the other one, Reese Witherspoon, is like just about to be the most popular girl in school because she's just slutty enough and she's just hot enough and she's just kind of like gum chomping enough and doesn't really give a shit about grades. She's only there to socialize. So the two different, kind of high school experiences there. And then during the Pleasantville Marathon, they're sucked into the TV, and now they're playing like the brother and sister characters on the show. So everybody looks at them as being, Bud and Mary Sue, even though they are, the characters that we've been seeing from the 90s. And then as they start introducing their own little like words and phrases, it starts changing the show around them. And as people experience, like kind of their, I guess like their true nature or their actual inner desires start to come out. This is when color comes into this black and white world. So the rest of the cast, you've got Jeff Daniels, who plays like the guy who runs the soda shop. You've got Joan Allen and William H. Macy. Like, what a perfect casting for like a 1950s couple.
Yes.
You've got Don Knotts as like, I guess you could say the kind of evil or at least sinister TV repairman who actually gives them the magic remote that sends them back into the show. You've got JT Walsh playing like the, conservative, I don't like change, gruff mayor in one of his last roles. And then I totally forgot about this, but Paul Walker pops up he's the love interest for Reese Witherspoon when she's in Pleasantville. And I would not have, if you would have said before rewatching this, like, Paul Walker, has he got some comedy chops? Like, no. What are you talking about? Like, he is solid in this one, and he's doing like good comedy in this one. It's like, but it's like heartfelt, good comedy. But no, the visuals are stunning. It's one of those, like, it's such a simple parable kind of story. You know, colors introduced as characters kind of change and evolve and realize what their inner passions are. Like Jeff Daniels, you know, realizes, oh, I want to be a painter, not just, you know, running a diner. So, you know, books, the pages start filling in as people start discovering more and more about stories and art and, you know, true, like, you know, meaning in their lives rather than just boring old routine. But it's ultimately, it does fit into Kids on an Adventure. And I hadn't really watched it that way because it's the kids that are there introducing, you know, passion and art and thought and ideas and philosophy to this black and white world. And then whether or not change happens or not is all because, like, these kids are there on an adventure. And by the end, you're just like, it's this gorgeous, just obscenely technicolor, you know, just color marvel of the way this town is decorated. And it's got this kind of oddly trippy ending that I don't want to give away. It's not like a M. Night Shyamalan reveal, but it's like the way that the adult dynamics play out is odd at the end, and I'm still not 100% sure what that means. But as you watch it nowadays too, I use the word parable specifically because it worked for me in the 90s. Like, I wore out my DVD of this. I just would put it on, you know, over and over again when I was doing whatever. Like, it was just on around me, like you'd put on a favorite album. But I think it's a parable because the American culture that we have nowadays even is still cannot let go of this fantasy of, like, the great America of the 1950s. And it was like, was it? And this movie really plays with that of, like, yeah, that black and white image you have was a TV show idea. Of, like, the good old days. And this movie kind of messed with it, but also in a total family film structure.
Yeah. No, you're right. Now, I will say real quick, I mean, that movie was somewhat of a, probably where I started to think different about movies than some of my contemporaries or friends. You know, it was, I think it came out, what did that come out, like 98? Okay, I think I would have been like either ninth grade or eighth grade or something. So I had seen the commercials for that, trailers. So, like, you know, I begged my parents to take me, and some of my friends came with me. They thought it was boring to tears, but I thought, you know, this was like a really amazing movie. And then I was fortunate to have an English teacher in my freshman year of high school. We kind of broke it down scene by scene. Like,
oh, wow.
You know, I think this was like maybe before parents started to get kind of mad about certain movies being shown. But no, like, he would play it, and then, like, we would play it up to a certain point, then we would talk about it.
Okay.
And you know, he would talk about a lot of the symbolism in the movie. Like, there's a scene where I think Reese Witherspoon grabs an apple, then it kind of fades into, like, the moon.
Oh, the full moon right behind it. Oh,
yeah,
great shot.
So he's like, see that symbolism, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it really, that's something. Yeah, it's just, you know, hearing you talk about it just triggered it in my head. I was like, you know, that was really a pivotal movie for me.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it really is. There's a lot to it there. Again, but also, like, yeah, it's PG-13. You do, I mean, Joan Allen does masturbate in a tub and have a tree on fire level, you know, orgasm explosion, but you know, in a PG-13 way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that it does. It holds up. I did a rewatch and I was like, fuck, I don't own this anymore. So I had to go grab it. But then, yeah, it was like, okay, yeah, Kids on an Adventure. If that world would not have changed for those characters, it wouldn't have opened up without those kids going on their adventures. So, Pleasantville, 1998. What is your pick for Kids on an Adventure, Mike?
All right. So, like I said, I was going through a lot of, like, the 80s lists and everything, and I had realized I had never watched the movie The Gate from 1987.
There is a passageway to the most evil place you can imagine. A gate behind which the demons wait to take back what was once theirs. And Now, someone has opened the gate.
There's this weird tearing sound. There is the decomposed corpse of her dead father.
Oh no.
He's tearing out hair by the hands.
I'm calling the police.
You got demons.
You mean you guys were serious about that demon stuff? Demons? What kind?
You've been bad!
It stars young Steven Dorff in his film. Yeah, in his film debut. He was probably like 10 or 9 or 10 or something.
Okay.
And it is it's basically about a young man who he has this nightmare basically at the beginning of the film of of finding his home abandoned and then going to a treehouse for it to be struck by lightning. But when he wakes up, they realizes there is this, the remnants of the treehouse are in the middle, and there's this hole in their backyard. Mm-hmm. And he discovers this geode, which ultimately opens up this world of these goblins that live underneath the ground.
Okay.
And it's they start to get into the house, and basically the parents are on this vacation. So it's basically him and his sister and his best friend who are at the house most of the time. And they start to get these different visions of things. So like each person sees something that's not actually there. So like at one point, the friend thinks that the dog is his mother who is deceased, and they're like dancing. But then when he wakes up, like the dog is like dead, and I'm not explaining it that great. I will say this, but no, it's one of those. It's one of those. I think a movie that probably pushed the envelope a little bit in its PG-13 rating.
Okay,
but it is at the core of it is this kind of, there is a sweetness to it. The brother and the sister are very close, even though they're years apart a little bit in age, where she's a teenager, she has these friends who are always over, but ultimately they have to like face the demons that are attacking their house.
Okay.
But some really cool special effects. I think a combination of stop motion and
nice.
also of some some practical that's going on there. I think the only reason why it was not called The Pit, because there was another movie called The Pit that came out early in the 80s that
okay.
Our friend Dave Huffman loves. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but it's about a kid. It's basically about a kid who finds a pit, and there's these goblins at the bottom. So he just starts throwing people into it. Because otherwise, if he doesn't keep the goblins fed, they're going to like come out and eat people. So,
okay.
So this one is called The Gate.
The Gate. Okay.
But they're both, the both thing that they have in common is that they're both Canadian US co-productions.
Okay.
But yeah, it's certainly, it's not the best 80s movie that I've seen, or 80s kids movie, but it's certainly there was some pretty good, like I said, there were some pretty good scares, and the practical effects were pretty interesting. It's it's one of those ones like, hey, I'm glad I've seen it. I probably don't have to see it again. But I have looked up on some forums where some people do consider this like one of the kind of cult classics of the of the 80s as far as horror films go.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued just because of, well, I like Steven Dorff a lot, but it's also an era of horror. But you said this one is PG-13.
It is. It is.
Okay. Yeah, but especially like since it sounds like the target audience would be like a kid audience, and so pushing the envelope, like you said, within PG-13 as well. Like I'm interested in that. Also, that's a really cool premise because it seems like also it's one of those horror. It potentially could be one of those horror movies. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, kids are home alone and there's like the monsters from like the gate. Sorry.
Yeah.
Out there, like you have to defend the house and like they have to learn some self-reliance and work together. And there's an element of, like the monsters kids are always afraid of. Like that's a childhood fear come to life kind of vibe to it.
And in the surrealism, sometimes that's happening where they're, like I said, where they're seeing people who are not actually there.
Right.
Kind of throws this like interesting element into it. And fun fact, the sister has a friend in there, and I'm like a big fan of like all things 80s, but I like the series The Goldbergs, and one of the Yentas is in this movie. She was only 12 years old at the time.
Oh wow.
And I realized like she's Canadian, so
there you
go. I think there's so many of those movies that probably maybe we didn't realize were filmed in Canada,
right.
So especially horror and sci-fi movies, they had like the run of the mill of those up in Canada,
right.
So I don't know what it is in the water in Canada, but they love their horror and sci-fi.
Or certain production companies were just like, hey, nice little tax loophole or rebate here, so let's go to Canada. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I mean it's definitely worth a watch, and it's on Amazon's, or I'm sorry, IMDb's Freevee, or whatever they call it. Yeah, it's like their free version
where there's ads.
So yes. So there's a few ads during it, but it's like under 90 minutes, so you can't really complain.
That's good. Yeah, no, it doesn't overstay its welcome. And since we were given so much shit at the top of the show to child actors, we should probably then say like, I would say acting in Pleasantville, thumbs up. Like it's doing what it's doing. It's a little stiff at the start, but it's, black and white TV acting, and then it grows over it. How is the child acting in The Gate? Is it?
I think Steven Dorff really shows his promise at a young age. It was his film debut. I think he does pretty well. Some of the other actors, the lady who eventually was on the Goldberg, she's not bad. Given what it's basically like the, what are you doing? Come on, it's those kind of lines. Right. But the characters who played the sister and the best friend didn't really have many roles after. So, I don't know if there's and sometimes you'll see kids from the 80s or stars from the 80s who only had like their one movie that they're known for, and then they dropped out of business. But, I think they're not bad.
All right.
It could be a lot worse.
Oh, indeed.
Well, what challenge do you think we got for us next time?
So next time, I was thinking, we're obviously we're heading into summertime here, and I was looking like it feels like theatrical release movies are coming back this summer in a way that they just physically couldn't, or they just wasn't possible the last couple of years. Even though Hollywood films, to a degree, all films were trying.
Yeah.
But there was like that blockbuster fear the last couple of years. Like, do we put out Bond right now? No. It's definitely, like really playing like that weird dance with, COVID and different variants and whatnot. Whereas, I don't know, in some cases, numbers be damned. People are like, no, fuck it. Blockbusters are back this year for sure. Because, we got Maverick out. There's Jurassic Park coming out. There's a whole slate where I was like, okay, damn, there's some like blockbuster material coming here. So I thought, let's take a look at some summer blockbusters.
Yes.
Let's see what we can dredge up here and see what I think it also could be, with young podcast here, a little litmus test for like what draws me as a blockbuster, what draws you as a blockbuster, Mike.
Yeah.
And see what's going in there. Now, I do want to have a quick little like caveat or explanation there where I don't want to limit it to just like oh, that movie made $1 billion. Like that's a block. I don't
Sure.
like definitions of blockbuster obviously are like, or they can be made a shitload of money. But there's also this interesting phenomenon within Hollywood of like the intended blockbuster.
Yes.
Where like this studio thought it thought it had a blockbuster, and it came out summer season, whatever, thought it was gonna be summer blockbuster. Top of my head, I'm still stuck on, for some reason, John Carter. I don't know why. There's other examples out there, but like that was going to be the big tentpole movie that summer, and it tanked. So I still kind of have it as official, like it's in a blockbuster category in my head because it's what it was intended to be, even though it didn't actually become one. So yeah, it could be an intended blockbuster or an actual blockbuster, but summer blockbusters. It's the season, and why not? Let's jump in and see what we come up with here.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, look forward to seeing what's on your summer blockbuster list, Mike, and I guess we'll find out next episode and talk soon.
Have a good one.